Handbook 2, Administering the Church, does not explain the calling and setting apart of either apostles or the 70. It does, however, indicate that the Church has fundamentally changed the nature of the apostolic calling and that of a 70. Where once both apostle and 70 were elders, set apart to a special ministry, both are now offices in the Melchizedek priesthood, the same as high priests and elders. This directly contradicts the Lord's statement that apostles are elders. Furthermore, when the Lord listed the offices of the Melchizedek priesthood within the church, he listed only high priests and elders. He did not list either apostle or 70 as a priesthood office. Whether or not apostles and the 70 are ordained and set apart by the laying on of hands, it is improper to ordain them as specific priesthood offices. They are callings, not offices. Of course, the handbook cites no scriptural or revelatory basis for these claims. As we noted earlier, missionaries at the beginning of this dispensation were called, ordained, and set apart by a conference. This followed the pattern in the church at the meridian of times. Paul and Barnabas were likewise called and set apart by a conference. The modern church has wholly rearranged the calling of a missionary. No longer do conferences select and set apart missionaries. Nowadays, members apply to become missionaries, filling out complicated applications and submitting to a lengthy evaluation process, including interviews and medical examinations. After the evaluation process, an apostle designated by the First Presidency will assign the new missionary to his field of work. The missionary will receive a letter from the President of the Church making the call official. There is no sustaining or vote of common consent involved in the call of a missionary. The Church has provided no revelation from the Lord instituting this lengthy vetting process. Nor is there any scriptural or revelatory basis for the change in selection authority and the absence of a vote of common consent. The modern church has expanded the use of the ordinance of setting apart well beyond its original use and intent. Setting apart is used to delegate authority for all non-priesthood callings and for those priesthood callings not considered priesthood offices. A priesthood holder must perform the ordinance even though the calling may not require priesthood authority. Of course, the question is, how can a priesthood holder confer non-priesthood authority through a priesthood ordinance? The Church has never answered this question. Nor does the handbook explain why a priesthood ordinance originally intended and used to confer priesthood authority is now being used to confer non-priesthood authority. It cites no scriptural or revelatory basis for this expanded use of the ordinance. The handbook contains a lengthy chart of priesthood and non-priesthood callings that require the ordinance of setting apart. An even more important question is why there are non-priesthood callings in the church in the first place. According to the Lord in his revelation on priesthood to Joseph Smith, all offices in the church are priesthood. In other words, there is no such thing as a non-priesthood office or calling in the church. The likely model for the Church's ordinance of setting apart for non-priesthood callings is the Female Relief Society of Nauvoo. According to the handbook, the Relief Society is an auxiliary to the priesthood. This means that the Relief Society and other auxiliaries are not priesthood organizations. Since the Relief Society is not a priesthood organization, it is the bishopric that provides priesthood leadership for the society at the ward level and the stake president at the stake level. Officers in the Relief Society are set apart to the respective offices. But the original Relief Society, the Female Relief Society of Nauvoo, was not organized in this manner. The Nauvoo Relief Society was a priesthood organization and not an auxiliary. Its officers held priesthood office and were ordained and set apart as in the regular church. In essence, it was a female priesthood quorum. Joseph Smith explicitly organized the society as a kingdom of priests, claiming that this was done in ancient times. The law of common consent applied to the settings apart for the Nauvoo Relief Society. Prior to their settings apart, the presidents of the society were all elected to their offices by vote of the sisters attending the organizational meeting. After the presidency of the Nauvoo Relief Society was elected, each of the three sisters were ordained or set apart to their callings by the laying on of hands. The society functioned as a priesthood quorum and cannot be considered an auxiliary as the Church now claims it was and is. Ordaining and setting apart in the Nauvoo Female Relief Society was a priesthood ordinance that conferred priesthood power. The Church has never explained why it has relegated the Relief Society to an auxiliary organization without priesthood authority. The handbook does not provide any scriptural or revelatory basis for the claim that the Relief Society is an auxiliary to the priesthood.